Genesis 19 through 22, however far we get tonight. Genesis 19, 1 through 29, God destroys Sodom and Gomorrah. We read through it, over it, last week. We didn't read it last week. We won't read all of it this week, Genesis 19. But I do want to point out something from Genesis 19. We're going to talk about Lot also. So we'll spend a lot of time right here. We're not going to read every word. Verse 6, Genesis 19 and 6. Lot went out to them at the doorway and shut the door behind him and said, "Please, my brothers, do not act wickedly." Now, what were they doing? This is a gimme answer question. What did they want to do? What were they trying to do?
Pursuing sodomy.
Pursuing sodomy. Lot comes out and says, "You're acting wickedly." What was their reply? Verse 9. "Stand aside. Furthermore," they said, "this one came in as an alien, and already he's acting like a judge." Have you heard anything like that nowadays? Don't judge me. You're intolerant. You're homophobic. Don't judge me. You're unloving. By the way, in saying this one's acting the judge, what are they themselves doing?
They're implying there's a difference between right and wrong.
They're acting the judge. Everybody understands there has to be judges. Everybody understands that. We legislate morality often, okay? Everybody understands there has to be a judge. The question isn't whether or not there has to be a judge. The question is, what is the standard? That's the question. There will be a standard, right? So here, nothing's changed. Here they are doing their sodomy or trying to. Somebody says, "You're being wicked." They say, "Don't you judge us." We hear that nowadays. Isaiah chapter 3. The Lord is prophesying of Israel's judgment because of their sinful behavior. Verse 8. Jerusalem, so Isaiah 3:8. "Jerusalem has stumbled and Judah has fallen because their speech and their actions are against the Lord. They rebel against his glorious presence." So they're against him and they're rebelling. "The expression of their faces bears witness against them." And listen, "they display their sin like Sodom. They do not even conceal it." Does that sound like now? They're not in the closet anymore, right? Now they're in the closet and they're out of the closet. Now they're in the halls of Congress, right? That's where they are now, running for the presidency, so on and so forth. Here's another patch. So we see these similarities. Nothing's changed. 2 Peter. This is the text. 2 Peter 2. This is the text that will talk about righteous Lot. Actually, it's not talking about righteous Lot. It's talking about Sodom. It also does mention Lot. But, so 2 Peter 2 and 9. "The Lord knows how to rescue the ungodly from temptation and keep the unrighteous under punishment." That's actually what he's talking about. "For the day of judgment. And especially those who," listen to what they do, "indulge in flesh and its corrupt desires," and listen what else goes with that, "despise authority." They hate it. They hate authority. Well, that is, they hate it when somebody else is in authority, right? So here we have the same. This is what the Lord says was going on in Sodom. The Lord says was going on with Israel some 500 years later, or 1,500 years later, or however you want to look at it. And then the Lord is saying, look, this is the way they act. So when you see it, don't be surprised to see it. That's the only thing I want to say about Sodom. Right now, we're going to go back and look at Lot. But anything about Sodom, yes?
The emphasis in verse 4. "The men of the city, young and old, all the people, to the last man."
Right.
Now, even if that didn't really mean it literally, I mean, it really puts Abraham's
Uh-huh.
45,
Debate.
30, 35, 30,
Right.
you know, apparently not.
Right.
Not one.
Right.
You know. And how long, I meant to ask you, how long has it been since him and Abraham parted ways? Lot and Abraham part ways, and he goes down and settles near, even as far as Sodom, it says.
14 years or so. Because
Okay, so 14 years or
yeah.
so. And
13 years at least.
And they say, mine says it differently, this fellow came to sojourn. Yours said he's an alien. He's been there
Yeah.
14 years, and their perspective of him is still that he's the new neighbor.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. The next section is 30 through 38, and I just want to, we know what happens here. Verse 30, Lot went up from Zoar and stayed in the mountains. Okay, that's how this little section starts, which is ironic, seeming how this is exactly what the Lord had told him to do, and he had argued against it. In verse 17, they brought them outside. One said, escape for your life. Do not look behind you. Do not stay anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains, so that you will not be swept away. But Lot said to them, oh, no, my lords. Now behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have magnified your loving kindness, which you have shown me by saving my life. I cannot escape to the mountains, for disaster will overtake me, and I will die. Now behold, this town is near enough. And he asked for Zoar in verse 22, the end of it. Therefore, the name of the town was called Zoar. So, God says, go to the mountains. Lot says, no, I'll die there. I want to go to Zoar. Well, the next thing we know, Lot went up from Zoar and stayed in the mountains. So he ends up right where God had told him to go, so always listen to God first. And his two daughters stayed with him, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. Well, apparently the very thing he thought would happen in the mountains and wouldn't happen in Zoar is the thing that happened to him if he had gone to the mountains. So there's your human wisdom. All right, that's point number one. He stayed in a cave. Then the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man on the earth to come in to us after the manner of the earth. Voltaire said, those who can make you believe absurdities, can make you commit atrocities. You believe something crazy, you'll do something crazy. There's not a man on the earth. Really? Well, they believed it, apparently, and they end up doing what they did. All right. I'm ready to look at Lot. I'm not going to talk much more about, well, we'll see a little bit. All right. We'll look at Lot, and then before we go on from this chapter, we'll give another chance to talk about anything. I'll look at Lot. 3 categories: what we know, what we love, and what we learn. What we know. So let's just, here's the text. This is all that we know. Genesis 13, after the fight, or to resolve the fight between the two families, really, or the one family, 2 divisions. Verse 9, Abraham says, you choose. Verse 10, this is what we know. Lot lifted up his eyes, saw the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered, everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. Okay, I'm going to call that, he's focused on wealth. Mostly I'm calling it wealth because that's what it will lead to, that's what he's thinking about, but also because it's short and that works in my slide. So, choose anywhere. He sees what will be good earthly circumstances. Verse 11, he chose for himself. I see, I choose. By the way, this sounds like Genesis chapter 6, where they're marrying anybody that they see is pretty. She's good looking, I choose her. It's the same idea. Thus they separated from each other. Abraham settled in the land of Canaan. Verse 13. Okay, so I got to catch up. He focused on wealth. He chose wealth. He lived among sin. Verse 12. Abraham settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked, sinners against the Lord. Now Lot's smart enough to know this. We know this from what will be said of him later on. He overlooked sin. Now I understand what 2 Peter says, but and that only emphasizes my point. He's overlooking it. He's going to say, in one way, yeah, I see it, but I'm not going to allow that to be the major influence on my decision. So we have to give him credit where credit is due. Let's turn to 2 Peter. 2 Peter 3, verse 7 says he rescued righteous Lot. So he's righteous. He's a righteous man, oppressed by the sensual conduct of unprincipled men. For by what he saw and heard, that righteous man, while living among them, felt his righteous soul tormented day after day by their lawless deeds. But he overlooked it. In order to stay there, he had to say, okay, I'm going to deal with this. By the way, I do want to say this before I forget to. Is it possible to live in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation and not partake of their crooked perverseness, not speak the same language? Lot doesn't, right? We know this. We know especially this down, we know all this, but he's a righteous man. The other day, Gary said, do you remember what he said about Lot? Why did he move there? Why did Lot say he moved there? Other than, we read that text and we understand he moved there because he saw, but what was Lot thinking about the sinners while he's there? Do you remember what Gary said? He said that he's got to believe, or something like that Lot was going there hoping to help them spiritually. Now, I will say this. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, love does not brag, is not arrogant, love does not act unbecomingly, does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth, bears all things, believes all things, and hopes all things. That's what Gary was doing with Mr. Lot. Okay? And I got to tell you, I need to think more like that. Because I don't know what he was thinking about those people. And if I don't know, then the default is to love hopes all things and love believes all things. Especially, so, I'll write it up here. We need to believe and hope all things about Lot. And actually there's evidence that we probably should hope all things and believe all things. What's the evidence? Love does not rejoice in unrighteousness. That's Lot. So Lot had that part of love down. So that seems to be supportive evidence that Lot also hopes to influence them to good. I don't know. I appreciate Gary's perspective. I need to hear that every once in a while. I say, Lee, think more positive things about people. Don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance, along those lines, right? I want to do something for fun. Let's assume Lot went there. Let's think the best. And let's assume Lot went there, hoping to influence them. Let's assume that. And the question will be, was that worth it? That's the question. What else do we know about Lot? By the way, what we learned, there were some observations, they also fall under what else we know. We know a lot more about Lot than we've said so far. Lot married a woman who became an example to all of somebody who loved the world. Lot offered his daughters to be raped. Lot brought up his daughters in a situation where their mates think God's word is a joke. Remember, I don't know if you remember that, but Lot, the angels say, get up and leave. But he appeared to his sons-in-law to be jesting. Lot brought up his daughters to think it was okay to get their father drunk and lay with him. Somebody wrote that they escaped the destruction, but not the pollution. You can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. You can take the girls out of Sodom, but you can't take the horribleness out of... like that. That didn't help. Lot hesitated at God's command. You remember the story. Story, I say. Verse 15. Up, take your wife and your daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in the punishment of the city. But he hesitated. Can you imagine that? Lot doubted, even refuted, or tried to refute God. Right? Go to the mountain. No. What does he say to them? No. That's what my version says. No. What is he thinking? Lot doubted, even tried to refute, and he negotiated with God. And that's something that you don't do, right? You don't. When God says go, okay, you go. Now, my point is this. This doesn't occur when you have a righteous and faithful person who is being nurtured and influenced in the right environment. That doesn't happen. So here's the question. We know essentially two things. Remember, one of them we're actually assuming. He focused on wealth, and this is what happened. Was it worth it? If that's all that we know, would that be worth it? And we don't know everything about Lot, but we can read here and we can say to somebody else, if your situation fits what we understand, then look at this and ask, was it worth it? Somebody wrote, no wealth could compensate for the moral degradation into which his family had sunk. No wealth could compensate. So he's faithful, he's living his faithful life, and he goes over there, and he remained faithful. He was righteous, but look at his family. That was a bad choice. We call that bad choice. Wasn't worth it. That leaves this one. Let's assume that's true. He hoped to influence them to good. Great! But not so great as to make the decision to move there.
Or at least to stay there once he moved.
Yeah, right. So you're going to be getting a lot more illustrations from 1776. Sorry. George Washington, the first major battle of the United States, well, it wouldn't be the United States, but the Continental Army, I guess, at that time, after they declared independence. So the first time we got this little thing called America as its own autonomous nation, the first fight, he got destroyed. People were saying he looked like a fool, except the retreat. The way he was completely surrounded except for this one little area, and by nighttime he transported 9,000 soldiers across the Hudson River at nighttime. Pretty impressive. He'd lost the battle, got destroyed in the battle. After the crushing defeat Washington suffered at Brooklyn, newspapers put heavy emphasis on Washington's daring night retreat. The escape from Brooklyn was a masterpiece, read the report in the New England Chronicle. The manner in which our retreat was performed, reported the Virginia Gazette, reflects the highest credit upon our commander-in-chief and the officers in general. Yeah, they were great at running away. Is that what you want to be known for? No. In like manner, he really wanted to influence them to good. Well, he destroyed his family. Or his staying there ended up in this. Yeah, but he really wanted to influence them to good. And sometimes you got to weigh the whole thing and say, okay, that's good to want to influence them to good, but not right now. By the way, if there was somebody there to be influenced to good, could God have done it without Lot? Never forget that. I'm not saying to run away from work. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying have the humility when you're in that situation to realize, no, God can use somebody else, and right now I got to think about this situation, and I'm looking at this situation, and I've got to protect what God has directly given to me. I'm all done with talking about Lot. Well, I got a couple more comments. I'll say this about what happened with his family. Parents can say one of two things about raising their children. The one thing they can say is, I did everything I knew how to nurture them, to bring them up in an environment where they'd be nurtured to praise God and serve God. And the only other thing is they can say is, I did not do everything I knew how. That's it. How sad when a child must think that his or her parent has not done what's best for them. And they won't know it when they're young. When will they know it? When they're maybe 15 and probably 30. That's when they'll turn around and say, why didn't you? Henry Knox, about this battle at New York City, wrote, "The eyes of all America are upon us. As we play our part, posterity will either bless or curse us. We've got to fight this fight. We've got to quit ye like men." They keep on using that expression over and over and over. Quitly. And they're saying, look, we got to fight hard. Because what happens in the future, they will turn around and look back on us. And they'll either say, thank you, or they'll say, why didn't you try harder? Now, nowadays, I guess we look back and we say thank you. The same with, you've got to raise your child. What kind of situation? Let's do what Lot did. Because we're assuming the best here. He hoped to influence them to good. If that were the case, then that was a poor decision. Maybe Lot didn't know it, but we can see. So learn vicariously, as it were. Okay. Maybe Lot didn't understand the power of bad influence, right? 1 Corinthians 15:33. Do not be deceived. The trend is bad company corrupts good morals. Okay.
I was reading an article recently that it was about verses that turn people into atheists, supposedly.
Yes.
Okay. And one of them referred to this verse 8, where what the reference was in the person's defense in saying that this is a terrible thing is that, look, he turned his daughters over to them and let them be raped, and instead of this other thing happening, which is not what happens.
Right.
Because I personally think that the point of the offer, and it's just an assumption, but the point of the offer was to show the depravity of these people, that they wouldn't even go after natural flesh. They want to go after strange flesh instead, if you want to say it that way. But the misuse of the verse to say that it says something that it clearly does not say, and then to use that excuse for, well, God obviously can't be real, because
right.
He would never countenance that.
Yeah.
So by rejecting God, what they do is they call this and everything else that happened in the story legitimate.
Right.
Because nothing's illegitimate.
Right. Wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Go to it. May to the victor go to the spoils.
Yeah. I mean, Gary says that, you replace this, okay, now you're back to the law of the jungle.
Yeah. Yeah. The next time we meet Lot's wife, be an illustration or example of a warning. Remember Lot's, 3 words. Remember Lot's wife. Okay. This brings us to, yes, this will be fun. Genesis 19 through 20.
Was there more than one Abimelech?
Yeah, it's Melech. Remember Melech? It's like Pharaoh. It's a title.
By the time I read to Genesis 26, I was just losing my mind.
Yeah, like how could this guy still be alive?
Well, not just that, but how could the same guy experience
Right.
this?
Right. Yeah. So Melech is like Moloch. It refers to like Adonai. It refers to a master. All right. Chapter 20. Abraham's faithless, fearful, foolish falsehood. Abraham's faithless, fearful, which means full of fear. Foolish falsehood. You guys read the text. George indicated as much when he just read this right now, when he just said that. A couple things about this before we actually get into it. This time, he really jeopardizes God's plan. What do I mean by that? What's the difference between this time when he does it and last time when he did it? This time when he does it, it's within the time period that she's going to get pregnant. Last time it was 24 years before. Now, he didn't know that, but we know. Last time it was 24 years before she'd get pregnant. So, but by God, the way God wanted it to happen. So there's no, you can't look back and say, actually, her child is not Abraham's, but Abimelech's. Right now, remember, it's only been a few weeks, literally. Within like 9, at the most, it's 14 weeks or something like that. Okay, since the Lord has showed up to say this time next year, she will twice. He says this time next year she will bear you a child. So if these are chronologically placed, then we got a real big threat here, a threat to the genealogy. And this time he really had reason to trust God. Why? Because he's already been through this exact same thing, right? So there's a point to be made from that. Sometimes we repeat our mistakes and our weaknesses, don't we? I'm not justifying anything, but that is my weakness. And I did it again. I did it again. Life is full. Oh, by the way, he who is without sin cast the first stone. So, I know your weakness, so I'm going to talk about your weakness all day long, right? I'm going to talk about your weakness all day long. Well, don't forget to look in the mirror, right? I've got the weakness. Life is full of ups and downs. Look at Abraham's life. Up, doing great, and down. You looking in the mirror when you read that? I am, for sure. God has to clean up Abraham's mess again. So in this story, just like last time, God's got to clean up his mess. What about me? How many times? I wouldn't know. But I wonder how many times God has had to clean up my mess somewhere. There is something else to be said of this. When God cleans up Abraham's mess, do we get the impression that God was grumbling at Abraham the whole time? I don't. He cleans up his mess. Abraham, you did it again. Now here's my point. If your dad or mom, you are, in this situation, you are dad or you are mom, and here comes your child and makes a mess. Whatever it is, and you've got to clean it up. You ever been there? Now, how are you going to do it? If you're not careful, now, I'm not saying there's no room for discipline or whatever that may be, but I see love, gentleness. All right. Abraham journeyed from there to the land of the Negev and settled between Kadesh and Shur. He sojourned to Gerar. Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, "She is my sister." So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream of the night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is married." Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, "Lord, will you slay a nation, even though," and my version says, blameless? Who does that sound like? Lord, will you destroy people who haven't sinned? Who did we just hear saying that to God? Abraham. And so here you have this child of God who has communications with God, understanding about God, that God is not going to destroy the blameless. And then you have this pagan that also understands this. What does this say about all people? All people understand something about God. They understand something about justice, right? Abimelech had not come near her, said, Lord, will you slay a nation even though blameless? Did he himself not say to me, she is my sister? So what is he saying here? He's saying, look, I'm innocent. And she herself say, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I have done this. What does this language remind you of in the New Testament in Romans? Romans chapter 2. In the integrity of my heart. So if you were to look at this guy's conscience, would it be defending him or accusing him? Defending him. Right? So here we have Romans. This is a perfect illustration of Romans chapter 2. Verse 12, all who have sinned without the law will perish without the law, and all who have sinned under the law will be judged by the law. For it is not the hearers of the law who are just before God, but the doers of the law. For when Gentiles who do not have the law do instinctively the things of the law, that's talking about Abimelech right there. She lied to me. I'm innocent. Innocent of what, by the way? Innocent of believing a lie, and also innocent of not committing adultery. I didn't touch her. I didn't go near her. What did he know was wrong? Adultery. In fact, he knew it was wrong so much that he was willing to murder in order to avoid adultery. Now that says he's confused, but he understands adultery is wrong. For when Gentiles, verse 15, in that they show the work of the law written on their hearts, their conscience all bearing witness, and the thoughts alternately accusing or else defending them. On the day when, according to my gospel, God will judge the secrets of men through Christ Jesus. So we have an illustration of this right here in Abimelech.
Are you saying that Abimelech was willing to murder?
According
to what?
Oh, according to Abraham, Abimelech would be willing to murder. And that would be the same. And by the way, there are records of pharaohs going after beautiful women and saying, go get the woman and murder the husband. So there are records of that happening. So it's...
Abraham certainly believed,
yeah,
looking at that society, hey, those people are willing to do anything.
Right.
So,
why was he there?
well, this is just the Negev. So this is the Southland. This should be their land. It will be their land. This is north of the border of the river of Egypt.
And this isn't that large of a society either.
No.
I mean, like, he's king, but he's
Yeah.
mayor.
Yeah, that's... Yep. Then God said to him in a dream, yes, I know that in the integrity of your heart you have done this. What does God know about people? He knows their hearts and their thoughts. Exactly. You have done this, and I also kept you from sinning against me. This seems to be some fulfillment of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, right? God will not let you get into a situation where you will not be able to control yourself. Somehow that's relevant, I think. I also kept you from sinning against me, therefore I did not let you touch her. Don't know how that happened? Now, therefore, restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. Verse 8. So Abimelech rose early in the morning and gets the ball in motion, doesn't he? Which is better than Lot did. So you here have one Gentile acting better than another Gentile. And you have one Gentile here acting like Abraham. God says to Abraham, get up and go. And chapter 17, he arose, and that very same day, he circumcised everybody in the house, right? So here you have Abimelech getting right to things. Then, oh, by the way, verse 8, they called all his servants and told all these things in their hearing, and the men were greatly frightened, as they ought to be. Verse 9, then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us? How have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not be done. Abimelech said to Abraham, what have you encountered that you have done this thing? And what do these questions imply or assume about how they interact, how people back then interacted with each other? What's the question? What have you done to us? Then he says, how have I sinned against you that you did this to me? What did I do to you that you did this to me? What is their justice? What is their justice? If you do something bad to me, it's just that I do something back to you. That's what they're going with right there, right? So, how have I sinned against you that you have brought this against me? Verse 10, what have you encountered that you have done this? What have we done to you that you would do this? Because if we'd done something to you, then it would be justifiable, right? No. But that's the mindset. In fact, you could say that that's our natural instinct. You did something to me, and this is what love is all about. Trying to curb this instinct, right? So, 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13 is trying to lift this world out of the mentality where you get me, I'm going to get you. So we bomb Soleimani or whatever, however you pronounce his name, and we're going to get you back with another bomb and a bigger one, and then we're going to bomb you back, and then we're going to bomb you back, and we're going to bomb everybody by the end of the day. Chapter 13, 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, does not brag, is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly, does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered. Isaiah 11. Prophecies of this new and wonderful and glorious people. Verse 6, the wolf will tear up the lamb every time it can. Whenever that lamb does something to the wolf. The wolf here is the person who wants to strike back, because that's the way we are. The wolf will dwell with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the young goat. Isaiah 2. Verse 2, it'll come about in the last days, the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as chief of mountains. It'll be raised above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. What's going to happen to these nations? Many peoples will come and say, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us concerning his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For the law will go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he will judge between nations, and will render decisions for many peoples. And they will hammer their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and never again will they learn war. Back here in Genesis chapter 20, the whole assumption is, we must have done something to you for you to do that wrong to us. It assumes, yeah, we fight. Whenever something bad happens, we fight. And that's the way of the world. The Lord wants to correct that behavior. Verse 11, Abraham gives his explanation, but I thought surely there is no fear of God in this place. By the way, how did Abraham get himself into this situation? 3 words. But I thought. But I thought. And there's more to it. And they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she actually is my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And it came about, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, what should he have thought? Let's see. God caused me to go. So God will always protect me. I won't have to lie. By the way, Abimelech understood it was a lie. Right? As soon as he was informed, he realized, you've lied to me. So I'm assuming that Abraham also knew, being more informed about the Lord's ways.
This is what the idea of adding insult to injury. She actually is my sister. Yeah, Abraham, that's what you meant, dude.
Right. It came about when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, this is, you know what a euphemism is? A euphemism is where you talk about something that's bad with good words. Right? That's a euphemism.
Well, another word.
Another word. But the euph is good. It's good. Come on. Holocaust camps. What were they called? The Nazis had them. They were not called Holocaust camps.
Work camps?
No.
Concentration camps?
Concentration camps. A concentration camp was originally a good place. That's partly how the Nazis started using these camps. They didn't do good things at these camps, but they called them concentration camps, so they got away with it for a little while. Okay? So here, this is the kindness you will do to me. Lie. Lie, honey. This is the kindness you'll do to me. That is the word that is mostly translated loving kindness, and it almost always has to do with loyalty. And some like the NIV says, this is the love which you will show me. And a new Bible, Net Bible, says, this is the loyalty you will show me. And that's a perfect translation, in my opinion. This is the kindness or the love or the loyalty you will show me. Everywhere I go, say, he is my brother. Now, should she be loyal to who? To whom should Sarah be loyal? And you can think of it this way. To whom should any wife be loyal? There's really two answers, but one first. God. And also to whom? Husband. Except when he asks you to sin. So I told you about this. I was down in some church somewhere, and there was a woman. They were studying Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3, and this woman says, Adam was a type of Christ. Christ died for the church because he loved the church. Sin kills. So Adam, being a type of Christ who was married to the church, Adam married to Eve. The reason Adam died is because of his loyalty to his wife. And her point was, we should all be that. Husbands need to be so loyal to their wives that they will even sin for their wives. Is that true? Even if, forget the logic, but is that true? Absolutely not. In the same way, a wife should not be so loyal to her husband that she will sin for her husband. Shouldn't be. So remember this, my lovely chart was something like this, right? And here's the things we must do, and here are the things that we may not do. This is where the wife, submits. And even here, we must go to church, right? We must go to church. Now, are we going to go to church A or church B? The wife says, I don't know, honey. You decide which church we go to, but I have to go to some church somewhere, right? So there's a little bit of interaction there. I don't know if the wife calls her husband honey, but around my house that happens. Verse 14, Abimelech then took sheep and oxen and male and female servants and gave them to Abraham, restored his wife Sarah to him. Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before you, settle wherever you please. To Sarah he said, Behold, I have given your brother and your husband 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, it is your, and my version says, vindication. And that's what this is. I didn't touch her. Everything's fine. We have a public record. I did not go near her. So in chapter 21, which happens just months later, she has a child. Nobody can say, aha, I see what happened there. It was actually Abimelech's child. Comments or questions on this?
Mindy posted something years ago on Facebook that said, sorry ladies, it's never going to be God's will for you to be with another woman's husband. And that's this, exactly.
Right.
Abraham's figuring out God's will for him, and somehow it involves his wife being with another man. How she can have respect for him when he does this to her. Great, you're going to preserve me by throwing me to the godless And I'll be the one committing the adultery. I mean, like, what?
Which only emphasizes 1 Peter 3. I'm in the same way, you wives, be submissive to your own husbands, so that even if any of them are disobedient to the word or just plain old crazy, right? Yeah, how can you respect this guy? Well, you're not submitting to him because you respect him. You're submitting to him because you respect God the Father, right? I will make 2 more points myself, and then we'll be done or maybe somebody else has something. So, in verse 12, when asked to explain, why did you do this to me? He says in verse 13, it came about when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, this is what you'll do. So, here's the plan. Whenever we get in this situation, do this. How long ago was that plan made? 24 years ago. And here's the point. There's always time to get out of a really dumb plan. You ever find yourself? I'll tell you, I find myself in this situation often. And it is this. I will either be speeding, and I believe that you should not speed. I find whether or not you believe it, you've got some situation like this, I'm pretty sure. I find myself speeding, and I'll be going down the interstate, and I'll be cruising by this guy, and I'll look down, and as I forget that I'm speeding, and then I realize I'm speeding, but I'm 1/3 of the way, I'm 2/3 of the way past the guy. What do? Do you keep on? I don't. I won't. I'm not going to put you there.
I'll look. I'm in the same way. I look in the mirror. Is there somebody right behind me? I'm going to cause an accident if I slow down right now. Get behind this guy.
Do you slow down? Yeah, good job, you. I usually don't. I'm thinking, for the sake of, I don't know what, I'm going to get past him, and I know that's not nice to do to him. But here's one of the. I've got myself in this situation that's dumb. I've got myself in a dumb situation. There's always time to get out of a dumb situation, right? If the Lord allows you to do that, right? It's been 24 years. So another illustration. So the Army of America had been in New York City for months, digging trenches, preparing for the battle to come. They had done months and months and months of work. In one day, George Washington lost the battle. They were destroyed. That night, he looked around and he realized, if I don't escape tonight, we will lose. And he left that night. And one of the things that impressed the British mostly is that he would give up all the work he had done. But that's what saved him. Giving up all that work. It's never too... what if he had... but all these trenches! I've dug these trenches! Abraham apparently was dug in to his... But there's always time to give up these crazy plans we get ourselves into. Hebrews chapter 12, by the way, talks about this very thing. Hebrews 12, verse 1, therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses, among whom Abraham is one, surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which so easily entangles us. Yes. When? When do I do it? But I've been, and it doesn't even have to be a sin. I've been spending money on this. I've been spending money on this thing that is actually, it's not a sin. But I've been spending money, I've been putting in my time, and I've been blowing off other responsibilities to do this one, to do this one, to do this one, but I can't give it up now. Yes, you can. Walk away. Walk away. Finally, about this little lie Abraham told. Little lies can produce large temptations. What did Abraham's little lie do to Abimelech? I'm going to assume that Abimelech was tempted here. And if he wasn't, he would have been real soon. Little lies can lead to large temptations. Oh, it's just a little lie. You have no idea what the consequences will be. Abraham put temptation in front of his neighbors, risked his wife's chastity, and God's plan. Also, one lie usually leads to another. Little lies can have large consequences. It's just a little lie. What did God say to Abimelech? You are a dead man. Oh, it's just a little white lie. And you don't know what the consequences are going to be. Little lies indicate large inconsistencies. Abraham trusted God when he was going against 4 kings who had beaten 5 kings and giants. He trusted God. When he's at war with somebody else, he trusts God. When he's at peace with these people, he didn't trust God. There is a huge inconsistency here. Now, I understand that God's grace covers this, and thank God for his grace, but at the same time, it is a huge inconsistency. One that when we have it pointed out to us, we need to get rid of the inconsistency. Anybody else? Anything else from... Yes, ma'am.
I thought it was interesting how he's not only recorded that he does it once, but he does it twice. And then later on, Isaac does the same thing. And he wasn't even around when it, well, who knows what happened after this, but he wasn't even around at this point, and he still did it later on.
Yep. Good point. Yes.
I was, as we have been reading the prophets and some from the Restoration time period, particularly with the Babylonian kings, as you emphasized when you were studying them most recently, this idea that when these men of faith would stand up, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel, Jeremiah, and the others, and in some of these situations, the kings eventually go, now I know there is a God. Now I know that their God is the real God. This was one of those situations, and Abraham blew it, and so we'll blow it. But that, I mean, that's the idea here, is that we have an opportunity for somebody to learn from us the good way or from us the not so good way. And so he shows faith, and I hope I have as much faith. But at the same time, Abraham or Daniel,
Right.
Daniel showed extraordinary faith because he believed that even though I can't see a possible way out of it, okay, so Abraham's going to go down there and potentially die. Okay, God will take care of it, and he can walk out of there, and Abimelech can be going. Now, Abimelech ended up doing that anyway. He talks to God directly.
Yep.
But it's a missed opportunity.
I don't know if, sometimes you look at your children and you laugh. They're doing something they shouldn't do. But how can you not chuckle? Yeah, and you got to go talk to them. You say, don't do that. And you might even need to give them a really good spanking. You might need to. And so how do you juxtaposition these two together? You're laughing, but at the same time, this is pretty serious, and we need to deal with this. I wonder, you look down, I wonder if God is, chuckling at Abraham. Come on, Abraham. God is patient. I don't know if he's chuckling about any of this, but he sure is patient.